Hello everyone, I have got a lot working, so I'm going to cover what I did and what I had to change to get everything working, because I kind of have all movement working as well as stealth spots and rounds, and yeah, I got a bunch of stuff going. So let's take a quick look at what we got. Let's open up two windows here. I should have a server running. Do I? I do. Okay. So, I should make this bigger. Well, this should be fine, but I'll make this text bigger in a second here. So we created groups. I now make character one, just queue everybody, and then enter queue. Enter queue. Then we have our teams here. So we're going to move here. Going to move here. This guy's going to move to a stealth spot. This guy's going to move over here. That one's over there. That one's there. So you guys see the timer working and everything. You can see the opponent team is now slightly different shaded. What's cool is if this guy goes in here, you should on this screen no longer see them anymore because they went into a stealth spot. Hopefully. If it doesn't, something's wrong. See? And they're gone. So they're there. But now if we move this character into that stealth spot, we should make them visible. So if you're in the same stealth segment, it'll basically set a flag saying these two characters can see each other, and I'll cover that kind of visibility check. Speaking of visibility, I had visibility completely wrong. So now, yep, both characters can see each other. And if one steps out, the other one disappears, but the other team can still see that character. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how this is coming along so far. I'm pretty sure I'm done with movement at this point. Yeah, I don't think I have much left to do besides the dashes. The dashes will have a movement component, but since I don't have an ability system, can't really do that yet. So the ability system needs to go in place, then I can figure out all the movement stuff for the dash phase. But I'd rather get combat in so I can actually do something interesting instead of just like moving characters around. As cool as it is to just see them like move around and update. Oh, that's the wrong team. So yeah, I'm pretty... Oh, another thing that was a huge problem was collisions. So I had this idea of resolving conflicts of two characters. Actually, I can just show it. I don't have to draw it. So if two characters try to go to the same spot... Actually, let's make it three characters. They now will basically step back to their previous step. So this guy should step here. That one stays there because otherwise they would have conflicted there, and that one didn't go anywhere. So if this guy goes here and this guy goes here now, he should just step back to here. Hopefully. 5 seconds remaining. One thing I also realized is that the timer is going to be super important. I'm going to really have to adjust how long it's going to take for a round, because I can move 6 characters around within 15 seconds, but I couldn't imagine trying to like plan out tactics and stuff. Where's my third character? Oh, geez, he's right there. Yeah. So, no, I didn't get in time. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. So without anything else, let's take a look at how I did everything. So, make it bigger first. Much bigger. Hopefully people with crappy internet connections can see now. Also, one thing I'm also pleased about is the amount of time it actually takes to finalize rounds. So I'm still a little bit worried about performance stuff because, again, everything's running in a single go routine or thread or whatever you want to call it. So I'm very cautious of making this be a lot higher than even a millisecond per round finalization, which is basically where it's taking all the actions and then playing them and seeing how the state is updated. So we are looking pretty good. I mean, 500 microseconds, it's like half a millisecond. So yeah, not too bad, not too bad. So let's take a look at, what should we cover first? Maybe path movement. So last time, actually for the path movement, we're gonna look at resolving conflicts and then visibility as well. So resolving conflicts is actually done. I took it out of the path movement because I realized I needed a completely different data structure to control, to two or more characters bump into the same point. While it was working in the other version, it only worked if for two characters. The third character would be able to sneak in. And the reason why is because I had the data structure was basically, so if you have this point here, it was basically like a list which was keeping track of each point. And then if two characters happen to have that same point, it would basically delete that from the list of conflicts. The problem is it works for two, but when a third one comes in, goes to check, it's been deleted. So it says, hey, you know what? I have that free slot and I can just go right in. So it took a lot of kind of thinking of how I would resolve this type of issue. And I came up with this kind of, I don't like it because it's kind of clever and I don't like clever stuff, but I kind of had to because, I mean, so basically what it is, it's a list. It's a list of conflicts. And what I do is I take each of the player's movements, I reverse them so that the end of the path is first, so it's much quicker to iterate over. And then I iterate over each of that character's movements, and then I add it as a node to my list. And depending on the path index, so if it's index 0, it'll be here, index 1 will be here, and index 0 to start will have, inside of that node, it will have a map. And that map contains a hashed key of the index that we're on, the point, x and y coordinates, and it kind of shifts the bits over so it can all fit, this hash can fit inside of a single integer value. So that's where the kind of the cleverness comes from. I don't like it, but I mean, it's the only way I could think of checking, like, do more than one or two characters attempt to move on their final step to this particular location, and this is what I came up with. So yeah, it's basically tracking these types of conflicts per path index. So again, if you have multiple steps where multiple characters are, let's say one is falling right behind the other one, you need to say, hey, you can't go to this point, but you also can't go to this point and this point. So it needs to keep track of that path index to bump them further and further back. And it shouldn't be any sort of, like, there shouldn't be a situation where characters get moved. I mean, if you can keep stepping back, at some point you'll end to the place that you started on, and that's okay. Someone can't sneak in behind, like if your start point's like this position and you get pushed back, but someone tries to sneak into it, they'll both get pushed back. But the person who has the initial start point of that cell will take precedence and take it back from whoever's trying to move into it. So that's how the conflicts now work as opposed to broken. So pretty happy about that. The other kind of major change I had to do was with visibility, and the visibility was really tricky, mainly because you have the stealth aspect of it. So if you're in a stealth, I call them segments, which is like a continuous segment or group of stealth points. I basically have to do a check to see if two characters of opposing teams are in that same segment. If they are, then they can both see each other as well as the team around. So I'll cover that in a second. But stealth segments, movement. What else was I going to cover? I already forgot. My brain's not here tonight. Let's just go over stealth segments because it's right here. So the way that stealth segments work is if we look at the level 1 map, I kind of modified it. So we have these stealth segments like this one. This is a segment of stealth points. And I just hard-coded it because I didn't feel like writing some fancy thing to generate, because I only need to do like 12 or 14 of them. So what you do is you end up creating this stealth segment kind of container, and then you add a range. So say between this point, whoa, don't want to do that. Between this point 013 and 017 is one stealth range. That way I can check if two characters have they're in that same range, then I can say they can see each other. And you can have multiple, so you could have like a stealth that goes up and then down, or down to the right, like we have with this one, where it's like stealth point, stealth point, stealth point, stealth point. So if one character is here and another's here, they'll still be able to see each other. And I do that by keeping them as a single grouped range. So I basically just hard-coded all this. So yeah, that's how the stealth segments are structured. And if we look at how they work, so add all the ranges. It's another kind of double 2D array here, where you have the segment, which is going to be indexed by an integer, and then the range of to's and froms. And again, so you could have multiple contiguous blocks or non-contiguous, but still want to keep them within the same segment, then you can do that as well. And what you do is you basically say, hey, is this player in range of this stealth point? Yes, it is. Here's the index for it, and return true, or it's not in any stealth point or that stealth range, and return false. And then you can take two characters, you can check their points. If they have the same index, then they are in the same point. So if we look at, where's this called from? Is in range 0.1. There we go. So inside of the game level, we check our points visible, 0.1 and 0.2. This is where we say, hey, is stealth point for character 1 and character 2, if they're both true, then you basically check, oh, I'm sorry, stealth point is a different thing. That is a very quick lookup of just popping in the X and Y coordinates and seeing if it has a stealth point. That way, if I don't have to go through this entire process if neither of them are inside of any sort of stealth point. So that makes it much faster. It's like a early exit. And then I just check if both points are in range and if they're equal. Otherwise, I have to do a little bit of an additional check to say, is one character in stealth and the other one's outside? And if they are, then return true for that character that's in it, and then false for the other one, and then vice versa. And this helps when I go do check visibility, which I can do in my path movements. And then inside of path movements, again, we have, this is called as, where is this called from? I think it's from Game World as well. Game World, check visibility. So here we actually have to do 2 loops over each team because each team has to check each other, which I was not doing the first time, which was leading to some interesting issues. But now we have to do both teams looking from both sides to check if they're visible or not. So the way we do that is we take this is the current path movement, we compare it against another path movement, and then we create a, where is it? Sorry. Need to step back a bit because the path and the visible paths now are not just if you move like 1, 2, or 3 slots, that's it. It now creates the entire slice as being the max distance. And I needed this for basically each step because otherwise you'd only check 2 path indexes for the first one. And then if it was another character that moved 6 indexes, it wouldn't check the other 6. So this way it's nice and clean to say, okay, you have these 10 slice elements you need to look through each time, and you can return, if they're not visible, nulls for each of those. So if you go inside of the stealth range, or sorry, outside of visibility, then back into it, you can actually record that within the entire slice that's sent back to the client. So it makes it much easier for replaying animations back to the client when they render it. So that's what we're doing for the max distance checks for full path and visibility. So both of them have the same size, which makes it just so much easier to reason about as you're iterating over it. And if they, let's say their player 1's only moved 3 slots, but the other one just moved 10, then you just keep taking the last position that they were in, and you use that for your calculations of are they still in range or of the max distance? Can they still see each other? And then we say, okay, if they can see each other, are they both visible? Are those points visible to one another? Meaning, is one in stealth and one's not? Which I kind of outlined the 4 cases here where they're neither inside of a stealth point, and it's true, which means they can see each other because we're less than max distance. Player 1 is in a stealth point and player 2 is not, which means player 1 can see player 2 but not vice versa, and again the same way the other way. And then if they're both in the same stealth segment, then they can both see each other, and then you have to add these visibility checks. So yeah, that took quite a bit of figuring out to see, because I had tons of weird issues where like they would disappear or they would move to incorrect paths or various things that were causing me to pull my hair out. But yeah, I think it's looking pretty good. We have pretty much all the movement done now, which is awesome because then I can start working on other stuff like character abilities, which I really, really want to do. So, what are we going to do for character abilities? I don't know yet. Actually, have I covered everything? I think that's everything. Did I close all the windows? Of course I closed the windows. I think, oh, client side, I did change some stuff. I'll just go over that real quick. I finally made the connection a proper Singleton, which is just a plugin for Phaser. So now it's just a connection plugin which manages the connection across the scene, so I don't have any weirdness of like the game calling into the menu to handle socket events. Yeah, it's much cleaner now. So the WebSocket connection just dispatches various messages to whoever's listening. Usually it's the game scene that's listening to any sort of game stuff, and then menu stuff is group related things. The game itself is pretty much unchanged except for like modifying certain things. The only major change I had to do was how I handle the animations, which is, where's the animations? Where's the on stuff? Take a look at our on events. So we have on, round started, that starts the timer. State updated, this is when we have a new round, the round decision has been completed, so then we enact round movements. This is where we iterate over the team as well as the opposing team, because we may have visibility of the other team. And we create this kind of animation stack, which is just for tracking when all animations have been completed. Once it's 0, I can say, hey, all animations are complete. Server, update your state, saying I've acknowledged all of the server information. And then the server can say, okay, new round started, and then fire off that event back to everybody. So the add movement between, I think I did cover this last time. Again, I had to make some changes because we have like, is it an opponent? We have to set the visibility. Right now, it's kind of janky how it, where's my server? I'm going to have to open 2 of these. You'll notice when one becomes visible, they just kind of pop up, which is not great. You'd want to see, it's kind of weird, like you don't want to send the state to the client for the other team if they don't see it. But at the same point, you don't want them to just like pop into view. So what I'm thinking of is including a direction inside of the message. So you'd have direction information. See, it just kind of popped up. You'd have direction information for the movement prior to the movements where you have visibility. So you'd say like going north, east, whatever, or north. Yeah, you know what I mean. So that's the plan for that. Pretty much everything else is unchanged. Yeah, just a lot of kind of visibility checks. One thing I'm definitely not used to is just how many conditions you have to check in game development. Like I'm used to like writing tools and security services and stuff. Like you don't have to write this many. There's just like conditions everywhere. You have to like keep track of so many things. It's amazing games aren't even more buggy than they already are, because it's a lot of work keeping track of everything, like paths and highlights and images and sprites and just all of this visibility stuff and movement, and yeah, there's just conditions everywhere. So something to get used to, I guess. Anything else? I think that's pretty much it. I don't really feel like there's much to be said about the client stuff. Because, I mean, I'm not going to spend too much time making this look any prettier. I'm just going to add some quick little images for abilities and stuff. And then I think I'm going to be just doing testing of ability types. So yeah, let's hop over into abilities. So, as a refresher of our world, where's our world? Is it V? It is V. So, we pretty much have all of this. That's obviously different because I'm testing, but this is all done. Like sending actions, validating the actions, accepting the actions. Actually, I don't think I'm sending back an accept message. That'd be kind of important. Oh, one thing I'm not doing is I'm not telling, although it's a 1v1, so it doesn't matter. But in a 3v3, you would want to tell the other characters on your team which path you're going to. So I'll definitely need to send that state information back to the other clients on your team. So that's one thing that's not done. But again, I'm holding off on 3v3 until I basically build a game. From there, I'll start looking at 3v3 again. But the way that I've been building it, it shouldn't be much work because the game session stuff is all very much coded in a way that it should not care if you're one player or three players. The server stuff, that's what cares about that. So, yeah, we're looking good. So, actions. Yeah, that's fine. Actions. So we have the various states that we need to go through, which are in... Where's our message? Game message. So we have the prep action, the dash action, move action is done, attack action, didn't do that yet, state updated, yeah, so all the other ones. So basically I'm at the point where I need to come up with an ability system, and what I'm thinking is probably a CSV file, to be honest, just to start. So if we just create a simple CSV, should I have an abilities package? Well, if I need to, I'll break it out. But for now, I'm going to put it under characters. Abilities.csv. So maybe later. We need absolutely an ability ID. We need, what else do we need? We need a type. So there's going to be multiple types. I'm just going to put it down here for now. We're going to have dash type or movement types. Oh, but I want to be able to merge these two. Movement types. Because there's like self movement. And then there's like opposing characters movement, or pushbacks, pulls. Actually, maybe I'll just call them push. Okay, so this is going to be ability types. Self movement, pushes, pulls. We have dots, damage over time. These are all, let's call these attack. And actually, you know, I probably want to, type ID wouldn't make sense, because we are going to have certain abilities I want to be able to do both damage and heal. So for example, you could say shoot a beam out, heal all characters within the beam if they're on your team, and then damage if they're not. So we're gonna have to do some sort of joining of these things. Anyways, so let's just go over not just attack, let's do everything. Attack, our ability types. Pushes, pulls, dots, area of effects. And let's just assume that all these can be combined with each other for now. Heals over time, straight up heals. We have, what else do we have? Straight damage. Cone damage, which is other. So you have like cone damage, you have path-based damage. This is like shooting a beam like I spoke earlier. You have thinking ricochet type stuff where you don't have line of sight but you can bounce it off. That's not really an AoE. Let's call this straight line damage, and then ricochet. I don't know if that's how you spell it. Ricochet damage. So ricochet damage. God, I know there's more than this. This is silly. Heals. What other types of AoEs are there? Cone damage, path-based. Oh, you also have someone hits you and it damages them, like shield, like thorn damage. I'm just gonna call it thorn damage for now. It's more like shield. Oh yeah, we have shields too. Shields. self team. Oh, we have also movement. What is it called? Movement impairing. So this is going to be like locking down cells. We're going to have path-based traps. Not path, just traps. So this could do either a slow, which will reduce the max distance a character could move, or we have knockdowns, or anything. Reveals is another one. So I'm trying to kind of organize this better. Dots. Let's go to smooth this to damage. All right. Support. Just damage. I don't know. What's the opposite of support? You have things like... Oh, debuffs? Not really. It's not really debuffs. I mean, it's part of it's debuff, but debuffs, traps, whatever. Supports, damage, AoEs. I mean, you can have AoEs, AoE heals too. Buffs, obviously. Damage, or maybe max distance, movement, shields. Oh, I guess it's covered. Movement. Knockbacks, pulls. Trying to think of other movement impairing ones too. Movement impairing effects. Locking down cells. Traps. I mean, locking down cells kind of traps. There's one character in Alice Reactor I liked playing. It was like you had a doppelganger. So it was basically, I just keep saying basically. You have two characters that you split in half, or it's one or two. Or there's two versions of you, and you move, and then it moves as well. Usually a little bit lagged. And I think Heroes of the Storm has a similar character. I forget her name. Similar concept. I'd like to do something like that because that'd be kind of fun. I really like that character. That was a lot of fun. Because they don't know which one's real, so they end up shooting the fake one. So, I don't even know what you would call that type of effect. Just doppelganger. Yeah, let's go with doppelganger effect. So that would usually do a reduced damage. Damage over time. Damage over time AoEs. So this be... Is there any other type of damage? Damage over time, thorn damage, straight line damage, ricochet damage, AoEs. I feel like I'm missing some, but I don't know what. Alright, that's enough for damage for now. Let's think about support more. I think support's pretty much covered too. Heals, shields, buffs, heals over time, AoE heals, which could also be heals over time. I'm going to do buffs, self, team, single target, and then AoE. Self, team, AoE, as well as the type of buffs. So that could be shield, thorns, which is basically taking damage back, increase damage, maybe increase in energy. Oh, I didn't even think about ultimate abilities too. That's good. That's not. So 3 normal abilities, 1 ultimate based on energy. Energy will increase over time per rounds, or maybe per damage, or if you pick up power-ups. So those will all contribute to getting more energy. The faster you get more energy, the quicker you can use your ultimate or reuse it. So that'll be that's the plan, because I mean that's kind of the standard for MOBAs, having ultimates. Buffs, traps, movement, locking down cells, still in a movement impairing. Traps. So the reason I'm doing this right now is I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to structure this data, because if I don't know what data I have, I don't know how to structure it. So if this is kind of boring, I apologize, but it's kind of necessary to come up with an ability system that you need to know what you support. So I feel like there's more dot types, or more damage types. I was trying to think of all the... Oh, well, do I have knockdowns? Like, what is that? It's like a... what is it called when you run a straight line and then you, like, not knockbacks. I mean, not dash. Jesus, what is the word for that? Not rampage. Whatever. Run straight ahead. Hit and knock down. That, whatever that word is, I forget. Good lord. Right. Rush. That's the word I'm looking for. Good grief. Rush and knockdowns. Yeah. AoEs. I mean, there's definitely going to be different types of AoEs. You can have multi-target AoEs. It could be limited, so it could be like just 1 or 2, or it could be 3 or 4, or within an area of effect. Yeah. Cool. Any other types of traps I can think of? Slows, knockdowns, reveals. So the character goes into a stealth point, doesn't matter, because the kind of main tactics of Atlas Reactor in this game as well is going to be prediction. So you're trying to predict where your opponent is going to move to or going to go. So that's going to be... The stealth points are really, really important. It's going to dictate how the game is going to play out. So if you're really good at like understanding how people play the game, you'll be able to predict, oh, they're going to dash at this point, or oh, they've already used their dash, they can't escape. So these types of things are like super important. So reveals is actually, it seems like kind of lame, like who would care about that, but it's actually very important for this type of game. Oh, what was the one that someone mentioned on the last talk? Oh, blinds, so that they can't see. Still don't know how I'm going to implement that, but it was definitely an interesting idea. So I'll probably continue with that. Blinds. There's got to be more. I'm trying to think of like Shadowbane when I used to play that. What type of abilities they had. I mean, it's most of the abilities you have in games are all based on these core features. AoEs and straight line damage, ricochet, rushes, knockbacks. It's just they sprinkle in different, like, oh, it's electricity. Oh, it's I don't know, fire based. Which is another thing to think about. It's like, do I want to implement resistances? So certain characters will have certain resistances or do more damage to types. That increases complexity, but it also increases kind of the fun factor in some cases. If you can kind of change how you play. Although sometimes it kind of stinks because If it's just luck of the draw, it's like, oh, you just happen to be this character, which has reduced damage towards this class. So that's always not fun, unless you can kind of switch it up somehow mid-game. That's interesting. Huh. Anyways. Right. Doppelganger effect, damage over time, thorn damage, straight line, ricochet, rush. Okay, I mean, I think this is enough for now. I'm sure I'm going to go watch some MOBAs and figure out some other ability types. But those are the ability types. So I feel like this should be almost a list. So ability types. So you'd have like ability 0 contains knockdown, rush, knockdown, and maybe I would actually have a secondary file or almost like a relational database style of where it could reference saying, oh, it's this ID, ability type ID. Let's just do like straight damage for now, for our example. Straight damage. All right, so we need ability types. We need amount. And I still haven't thought about, like I was saying earlier, about resistances. Ooh, armor piercing. Because there's definitely going to be armor. Armor piercing, shield piercing. Gosh, I cannot type tonight. Amount, armor piercing, shield piercing. This again assumes it's a damage style. Let's do heal amount and then direct damage amount, and then we're going to have splash damage amount. So yeah. Do you consider an AoE all direct damage? I think yes. Oh, max targets, max range, also very important. This is already getting ridiculously long. Max targets, max range. Yeah. I was just wondering if I should keep these the same and then break them out, but I need to know the amount. So let's just say straight damage, max target's going to be 1, max range is 10 cells, direct damage amount is 25, splash damage is 0, heal amount is 0, armor piercing, let's say 10, shield piercing 10. So you get, yeah, you break out the shield. Yeah, I'm gonna have to play with that. I'm not too sure yet. What else do we have? Oh, turns impacted. Let's put that valid for turns. And again, this is kind of weird because I'm gonna have you might want to have multiple abilities tick. So you could have 2 types of damage that's continuously ticking. One could expire early, the other one would stay on, so you'd want to keep. In that case, it might make sense to kind of almost double them up. So you'd say ability 1 is actually, ability 10 is actually abilities 2 and 3 together, combined. That might be a better way of structuring this. So I'd have almost like a table of amounts that I could kind of pull from, and then so it'd almost make them composable. You could compose the ability based on other composable types. So you'd have ability 0, like let's just say it's this one right here, and then ability 1 is actually including, or is actually 1 is based off of 0. So it would inherit everything from that, and then I could increase or So I could say max targets would be increased by 2. So now I can hit 2 characters with it. So it would take all the information from the first one and then add it to the second, which would be cool. And that would make things way easier to reason about. Not reason, it actually make it harder to reason about. Much easier to implement and kind of tweak, because then I can say, oh, I really like this ability. I want to reuse it, but I want to change this aspect of it. Yeah, I like the idea of compose. I'm going to take a note. Composable abilities. I need to get a spell checker for this thing because this is embarrassing. I guarantee there's an extension for it. Spell check. Code spell checker. Street side software. Do I trust you? 3.9 million. Alright. Well, if I get infected with something, at least 3.9 million other people get infected with something. That is my way of determining risk. Cool. Of course. Doesn't like debuffs. You, sir, are wrong. You need to add it to user setting and pairing. I knew that. Anyways, composable abilities is a really good idea. What other things, what other systems can I add in so it makes it easier for me? I think that's going to be my only good idea for the night. Because my brain is toast. Oh, let's see. Okay. So this stuff, these actions, right now all it has is an ability ID and then 2. For dashing, that makes sense. You could dash to multiple points or something. Firing, yes, you're firing 2. This is a little weird. That probably shouldn't take a point. No, it should, because you're going to select a cell for your attack, which will help, because then you can, let's say it's a cone-based attack. If they select the middle cell where a character was, we could then calculate from that cell, do either raycast or something, some other way, a method of determining what other cells would be hit within that radius, or half radius, or whatever you want to call it. So I think that makes sense. And then the ability ID will just be looked up from the CSV file, and then it'll be calculated on the server. This way, all I need to get from the client is say, where did they click and what ability was kind of active at the time when they clicked. And then I just have that single message to add to my queue, and then it resolves it during the fire resolution phase, which is good. Move, I actually don't, no, I do use that, but it doesn't have an ability ID. Prep phase is going to be a little bit, yeah. From to, so this would actually need a from point as well, but I can add that later. All right. So then actions, controller. Still haven't really thought about AI yet, but I'll get to that later. Conflicts, that stuff's all done. Movement's done. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could just start coding something, but I feel like without having all my data that I want in a structure that I want it, it's not going to really help, because I'm just going to delete it. Okay, let's think about how to make this composable. So this feels like this is kind of a base set of data that we can reuse. So I could say something is valid for 3 turns, max target of 3, max range is, let's say, 6, direct damage amount is 10, and then splash damage. Oh, I need tick amount. So yeah, tick amount. A lot of abilities will have an initial high damage, and then the tick will be lower. So to help balance it a bit. Also makes it so you can tweak it so if it's ticking too high, you just change that as opposed to the direct damage, or vice versa. So where was I? Actually, I kind of do want that CSV extension. Whatever. Valid for turns, max targets, max range, direct damage amount, splash damage, let's say 0. Tick amount, let's say 5, 0. So we would have a structure of that. And then also knockback distance. So that could be 1 cell, or no, I'd probably want 0. So it just knocks them down in their own cell. Yeah. So knockback distance, pole distance. Pole distance would be determined by the distance from your character to your opponent, so I don't need that. Trap area. Max range. So there's range and then there's area. So if we have, for example, we're in 1 cell, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah. So we would want to have the surrounding cells, or maybe 2 past the center. That would probably be a nice thing to have. Max targets, max range. Oh, you could just max radius. So this is really important for traps, because there might be, oh man, I didn't think about, walls. Totally walls. Movement impairing effects, walls. So you could bring up barriers. Those are also important. I feel like that is going to be separate. I almost want to do one of these types of things for each type, and then I can combine them. So all the damage stuff goes in one type of structure, one of the, so this will be just damage struct, and then we're going to have a debuff trap struct. I might not need to make it its own, but, and then a support, maybe even just a heals struct, and buff struct. This way it'll be very obvious, and you won't have these like ridiculously long CSV files. And then this stuff would actually just be like ability ID 0, damage struct ability ID. This is called damage ability ID. So for example, this would be 0. So damage ID 0. And then we could have like a heal ability ID and -1 for nothing, or just empty because it's CSV. That's valid. Yeah, that makes it kind of nice. The only thing that suffers from is it's not actually composable. I mean, it is in the sense that I can mix and match the damage, debuff, and heal and buffs, but I can't easily modify the values. How would I do that from data? I want this to be in a data format so it's easier to muck with, especially once I start getting into Unreal, because I don't want to have to recompile every freaking time. Although, I guess, yeah, I wouldn't have to. It's getting the information from the server anyways. So the server is just going to send back the delta of what changed. Anyways. Well, always write the first thing that comes to your mind first, because you're going to throw it away no matter what. So I'm just going to keep going with this kind of damage heal ability idea, and then I'll probably come back in like a day and be like, wow, that was a stupid idea, and then rewrite everything, because that's what you do. So, debuffs, traps, damage. I think we still need, yeah, we definitely still need a max radius. For debuffs, so debuff ID. Oh my god, I already immediately regret installing this, because now my OCD will kick in and I'll have to fix it. And debuff to user settings. Add struct to user settings. Right. So that is also going to have valid for turns, because traps usually do some sort of damage. So this one could actually reference damage struct. Damage ID. Yeah, this is already looking like a database table. Debuff ID, damage ID, valid for turns. Shoot. I don't even think, like, everything that applies for debuffs. No, that's not true. Movement impairment. Movement impairment. Thank you. So that'd be like minus distances. Yeah. Wow, it's already 10:20 and I have literally done nothing except for write this stupid CSV file. Alright, well. Sometimes you can't just code all the time, you gotta think about stuff. Movement. Is there anything else with traps? Walls. That would be... See, radius doesn't really work. You need to know that it's... what would you even call it? Like straight or line size? Yeah, let's go with line size. And then the person using the ability will be able to convert if it's like north, south, east, west, directional. So that doesn't need to be coded. What else? Blinds. Oh, reveals. How would you even codify a reveal? With a bool. Does reveal. That's how you do it. Because that would have max valid for turns. So you could say, yes, they went through my trap. It did X amount of damage from here, and it does a reveal true, and then you can see them no matter what, even if they go into stealth points. That should do the trick. Walls, barriers, locking down cells, that would be radius, which I have. Alright, support. Heal struct. It's just called support struct. Support ID could... Yeah. That's kind of weird. Having this kind of top level table that mixes them together, because this one could also just mix it in. Oh, then you wouldn't need it. Just get rid of it. Boosh. Done. Buffs. Support ID. Okay. So for buffs, we have pretty much the same as damage, except for it's not damage. I mean, it's stupid to duplicate, but whatever. Valve returns, max targets, max range, max radius, direct heal, splash heal amount, tick amount. Definitely don't need knockback. Anything else that goes into heals? Oh, if it... Yes. Siphons. Siphon percentage. So this is like your usual, like, you give another player part of your health. Yeah. Or you could have it where you select a target, you'll siphon their health and give it to whatever target. So it's kind of a damage and healing another teammate or yourself or whatever. Siphon percentage, yeah. So that should work regardless of it doesn't have a target. So, man, there's so much stuff to think about for this. And I haven't even started on ultimate abilities. Ugh. Anyways, support. Thorns. Right, so that could just reference damage ability IDs when they're combined. Oh, what else we got? Buffs, shields. Yeah. I think that covers everything. Next up is... Rush. Movement modifier. That could be... So there'd be a movement. So this would be movement ID. So it would be like increase range or decrease range or can jump to movement distance or max distance. Yeah. Again, I'm gonna have to kind of play with this, get it into code, see what it looks like, see how it works, feels to work with, because usually when I do this stuff, I have no idea how it's gonna actually play out until I actually start trying to code something for it. So if I created this data structure and then I created an interface and a object to work with it, and then I realized like, oh, this just, it doesn't feel right, like, oh, this should be a list or this should be a map or whatever. It's like, yeah, there's no point in getting too far into something. Just kind of get the general shape of what you're trying to do, and then I kind of go from there. And then I end up rewriting everything because it's completely wrong. Just like the resolving conflicts and movement stuff that I had to do. So I'm sure other people are able to just knock it out first time, no problem, but not me. But yeah, ricochet damage. That's going to have some like points. Like, it's ricochet amount. Ah, man, yeah, because then you could have a decrease if you bounce it multiple times and it decreases to a point where it's not as effective. Or it's more effective. I don't know. Oof, man. The one thing I don't want to do is make this too specific to an ability. I want these to be kind of generic. Otherwise, you're just going to have these really large structures with kind of things hanging off, and it's going to be a pain to deal with it. But yeah, I don't know how that's going to work. How do you put a doppelganger effect in? I'd have to go back and watch an Atlas Reactor video of that character, because they could do some really slick stuff. Like your ultimate, I think, was to switch positions with your doppelganger, and then during that switch it was a line or a beam based attack which would do crazy damage. So you try to position your two characters to get people in between you, I think. Again, it's been like 4 or 5 years since I played it. But looks like we're at time. Apologize to those who are looking for more code. This is more of a thinking kind of day. So yeah, I will hopefully have something to some sort of general structure for the next one on Wednesday. This one's good because I can do it whenever. I don't have to sit down all the time. I can just think in my head and come up with ideas. So looking forward to it. All right. Hope you learned something or enjoyed or whatever. Until next time.